Batya is an ordained Magi. Did I say that right?
You did say that.
Thank you. You taught me. A teacher and storyteller in the Jewish tradition. A retired middle school drama teacher. You poor girl. She now works with young people in both church and synagogue and is the director of Abraham's Tent, an interfaith summer camp for Christian, Jewish, and Muslim children. Her goal is to have children connect with the stories within their own traditions through their personal experiences. Batya also leads services, performs marriages, facilitates holiday celebrations, and has taken the pulpit on more than one occasion. Batya has spent more than 30 years as a professional storyteller, playwright, and performer. She brings those skills to her writing and her work with young people and faith groups. Her own novel for young people, Rebecca and the Talisman of Time, has been nominated for the Oregon Spirit Book Award and is available in local bookstores as well as Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and the publisher Portal Center Press. She also contributed to the book The Language of Life by Milt Markowitz, which explores the meaning of the energetic patterns of the Hebrew letters and is one of the team that put together new mitzvah stories for families, soon to be published by Reclaiming Judaism. Everybody, please put your hands together for Batya Podos.
I sound so good. It's such a joy to be with you tonight. Thanks for coming out on this Friday, Labor Day weekend. In the Jewish tradition, when you turn 13, you have a ceremony, a rite of passage, bringing you into adulthood. For boys, this is a bar mitzvah, and for girls, this is a bat mitzvah. Bat mitzvahs became popular within the last 50 years. When I was 13, there was no bat mitzvah for me. I had to wait until I was 56 to become an adult in my community. But an interesting thing happened to me while I was getting ready for that rite of passage, and that is that my grandmother, Nettie Deitch, my mother's mother, showed up. And this was something of note because she had been dead since 1986. She hovered around for that year. She hung out with me when I studied, and on the day of my ceremony, she stood by my shoulder as I read from the Torah. And then something else interesting happened. After the ceremony, the rest of my dead relatives showed up, and I was surrounded by ghosts for about a year. And they were with me everywhere. They were with me when I was driving. They were with me when I was watching TV. They were with me while I was teaching. It was not comfortable. It felt as though I was being pushed to do something, but I didn't know what I was supposed to be doing. It was as though there was this invisible hand pressing on my back, moving me towards something, but I didn't know what that something was. The day I started writing this book, the hand disappeared and so did the ghosts. And they have not visited me since, which makes me think that I did the right thing. So, Rebecca and the Talisman of Time is actually my second novel, but my first novel, which I wrote in the 80s, is unpublishable. We all have one of those, I think. And when I started writing, because I had been a middle school teacher for so long, it appears that my voice is the voice of a 13-year-old girl. So it's clear to me that that where my passion lies are in those stories for that middle age group and the adults who serve them. And although Rebecca's story is a story seen through her eyes, so it's seen through a Jewish lens, her friends are not Jewish. And the hope with the book is that it really is for all families and their kids who want to stand closer to their ancestors, to find out where they came from and to learn their stories. So in this story, in the chapter I'll be reading, what has happened for Rebecca is She's 13. That's what's happened to Rebecca. And some of us remember what that was like. And for her, things are exacerbated because there's been a divorce and there's been a move from Portland to Astoria, and she really hates her mother. They fight all the time. She's caught in that place where you really don't know who to blame. And so her mom gets a lot of that energy. She's having a hard time at school. She seems to be a little out of focus, a little distracted. She puts it down to puberty and tries to get on with things, but things are difficult for her. And she gets a note from her friend inviting her to a party where her major crush will be. And she really, really, really wants to go. But it's Friday night and her mother wants her to go to religious services. And they have this huge fight, and Rebecca, in typical adolescent fashion, stomps off, goes up to her room, slams the door, throws herself on her bed, and after a while she falls asleep. And what happens in this chapter begins a series of events that, even though she doesn't know it, will change her life. She didn't mean to fall asleep. She dreamt that her mother opened her door and looked in on her, and then she sank back down into dreaming until she heard the voice. At least she thought it was a voice, like a whisper at the frayed edges of the carpet of her mind. She couldn't quite catch what it was saying, but as she listened, the hair on the back of her neck prickled and her arms got goosebumps under her sweater. There was not one voice, but two, and they appeared to be having an argument. They were just out of reach of her hearing, yet they were there. She sat up to clear her head. Stupid, she scolded herself. Things weren't weird enough. Now she had to go scare herself. They must be outside in the street. That's why she couldn't understand them. But they seemed so close, like they were standing in her room next to her bed. She heaved herself off the bed, stiff from staying in one position for so long, and limped to her window. She peered out onto the late afternoon rain. It was always raining. Astoria was the wettest place on the North Oregon coast. She hated it. She wiped the condensation off the window and looked again. The street was empty. There was no one there. Her goosebumps did a little dance. The voices weren't outside. They really were inside her bedroom. Or maybe she was making the whole thing up and they were inside her head. That would be worse. Much worse. Is anybody there? She whispered. The voices stopped. Her hair returned to its proper place on her neck. The goosebumps went away. She dove onto her bed and covered herself with her quilt. She needed to talk to Kat. What good was a best friend if you couldn't talk to her when your life was falling apart? The only phone was downstairs, and she couldn't bear running into her mother. She listened to the endless rain. The day was gone, and the gray of Astoria's late evening hung like a slick curtain outside her window. By the time she made it downstairs, it would be full dark. She must have dreamt the voices, she thought, as she rubbed her arms. She must have gotten cold in her sleep. Downstairs, the Shabbat candles were lit on the table, and for a very brief moment, Rebecca missed the warm feeling of lighting the candles, something that she and her mother could do on a Friday night without fighting. They would say the prayer together, and Rebecca would imagine the Shekinah, the Sabbath bride, arriving with the evening. It looked like her mom had gone to services without her after all, which meant she could have gone to Kat's party. But someone was in the house, because there was a light on in the kitchen, and there was the sound of voices. This was probably what she had heard in her sleep. She hadn't made it up after all. Briefly, the goosebumps reappeared, but she recognized one of the voices. It was one she knew well. She turned the corner into the kitchen to see her grandmother by the stove, stirring away at a pot of soup and talking back to the radio. Grandma Ruth was exactly Rebecca's height, with the same out-of-control curly hair, only hers was dyed red. Her wardrobe was international, with fabrics from India, Africa, and Indonesia in exotic, colorful patterns. Grandma Ruth favored reds and purples. She always wore several inches of bangles on her wrists, which tinkled and clinked slightly whenever she moved, a sound that made Rebecca smile every time she heard it. Grandma Ruth was the one best thing, if you didn't count Kat, about moving to Astoria. She had the magical power of making Rebecca feel better just by her presence. "There you are, darling girl," her grandmother looked up from the pot on the stove. "Come and give me a kiss." Rebecca did, without hesitation, and sat down at the kitchen table, which had been the site of the fight with her mother. She wished, not for the first time, that she could live with Grandma Ruth instead. A bowl of steaming soup was set in front of her, and before she could protest. It smelled really good. Maybe she could eat a little. "I've had a long talk with your mother." Uh-oh, here it comes. Rebecca paused, spoon in midair. "It's this whole bat mitzvah thing," she confessed. "I think she wants me to become some kind of super Jew, you know? And if I don't want to study Hebrew all the time, or if I want to go to a party instead of going to services, and you know who will be there. It's like I'm letting her down. If it's so important to her," she gestured with her spoon, "why doesn't she have a bat mitzvah and leave me alone?" Her grandmother hid a laugh with a snort and buttered toast, her bangles jingling. "Your mother loves you very much, you know." "I know," Rebecca answered flatly. "But she's forgotten what it's like to be 13. It happens to all of us. It will happen to you one day too. Eat your soup." The toast appeared on the table. "You're not going to that party of yours until you have some dinner." Rebecca, caught completely by surprise, choked and sneezed, spraying soup all over the table. Grandma Ruth was her hero, her own fairy godmother who had just waved a wand, and yes, Cinderella, you shall go to the ball. She grabbed the napkin to wipe her nose, jumped up and put her arms around her grandmother, hugging her hard. "Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." She spun her around in a little dance of joy. Grandma Ruth gently untangled herself from Rebecca's grasp. "Don't thank me," she said. "Thank your mother." Rebecca sighed and stared at the ceiling. "I will." Her grandmother gave her a meaningful look. "Okay, I promise." "Now, I have something for you," Grandma Ruth said, "and I don't want you to say anything until you open it." Rebecca slid into her chair and attacked her soup while her grandmother left the room. When she returned, she was carrying a package, and she placed it on the table in front of Rebecca. "What is it?" "You're not supposed to say anything. Open it and see." It was wrapped in brown paper and tied with old string. The string had been wound around and around itself many times and tied with such an intricate knot that Rebecca's short fingernails couldn't pry it open. She got up and took a pair of scissors from the kitchen drawer, and with a snip, the string slid away from the package. The brown paper held its shape. Its folds were permanently creased with age. Rebecca felt a sudden flutter of excitement and something else, something like the strange, unsettling feeling she had in the hallway at school, in her bedroom when she thought she was hearing voices, the weird sensation that things were not exactly the way you thought they were. She wiped her hands on her jeans and carefully opened the paper. There, neatly folded, was a talis, the Jewish prayer shawl worn for Shabbat prayers and holy days. Every bat mitzvah girl or bar mitzvah boy received one, but mostly they were new, fresh from special order shops. This one was not. Rebecca let her hand hover over the talis but did not touch it. "I wasn't going to give this to you until your bat mitzvah, but you've been having such a difficult time lately. I thought you needed something special, so this seemed the right moment." Rebecca stared at the talis wrapped in its brown paper. She couldn't even imagine herself wearing it. Her grandmother went on. "It was my grandfather's." Rebecca thought, "Oh, great. No pressure there. It was passed to my father, but then he had no sons, so it came to me when he died, and now it's yours, Rebecca, for your bat mitzvah and all the years ahead." She reached across the table and took Rebecca's hand in hers. "I'm so proud of you, as proud as I've ever been in all my life." Rebecca squeezed her grandmother's hand and swallowed hard. She croaked out a thank you. How could she tell her Grandma Ruth that she was not, never would be ready for her bat mitzvah, that even thinking about it filled her with dread, made her want to run away from home, from her mother and Rabbi Esther. She was hopeless in Hebrew, stumbled over the prayers, and she still hadn't written her speech. The only thing she was sure of, absolutely sure of, was that she would be a disappointment to everybody, that she would let everyone down. She might have said those things, confessed all to her grandmother, but at that moment, the doorbell rang. "That will be Elena. It's raining. I thought you'd like a ride." Elena was Kat's older sister. Grandma Ruth was up, clearing dishes. Elena was waiting at the door. Confessions would have to wait. Rebecca swept up the package and ran upstairs to her room. She dumped it on her bed, dug through her closet until she found her favorite shirt, smeared on some lip gloss, and pounded down the stairs. "Bye, Grandma Ruth," she yelled over her shoulder, "and thanks for everything." "Be home by 11, her grandmother yelled back from the kitchen. "I'm waiting up for you, and I need my rest." Rebecca stepped out into a story of steady rain and into an evening full of possibilities.